Assalamu alaikum. So here is another vlog to be added to my series of vlogs on literary theory simplified. So today we are going to discuss deconstruction. So what is deconstruction? Deconstruction was both created and has been profoundly influenced by the French philosopher Jacques Derrida. Derrida, who coined the term deconstruction, argues that in Western culture, people tend to think and express their thoughts in terms of binary oppositions. For example, white, black, masculine, feminine, cause, effect, presence, absence, speech, writing, among many others. Derrida suggests that these oppositions are hierarchies in miniature, containing one term that Western culture views as positive or superior, while another considered negative or inferior, even if only slightly so. Through deconstruction, Derrida aims to erase the boundary between binary oppositions, and to do so in such a way that the hierarchy implied by the oppositions is thrown into question or challenged. Although deconstruction's ultimate aim may be to criticize Western logic, deconstruction arose as a response to structuralism and formalism. Structuralists believe that all elements of human culture, including literature, may be understood as parts of a system of signs, that is language. But Derrida, though he also greatly inspired by Saussure and other structuralists, but still Derrida rejected the structuralist belief that texts have identifiable centers of meaning, a belief structuralists shared with formalists. So what are the assumptions of deconstruction? So while formalist critics such as the new critics assume that the work of literature is a freestanding, self-contained object whose meaning can be found in the complex network of relations between its parts, like illusions, images, rhythms, sounds, etc., deconstructionists, by contrast, see works in terms of their undecidability. They reject the formalist view that a work of literature is demonstrably unified from beginning to end in one certain way, or that it is organized around a single center that ultimately can be identified. As a result, deconstructionists see text as more radically heterogeneous than do formalists. So what is the purpose of this approach? The point of the deconstructive analysis is to restructure or displace the opposition, not simply to reverse it, because its purpose is to, number one, to prove that the text does not have any singular meaning and it can be read and understood in various ways. Number two, to find out the disassociation of ideas and discontinuity of style to prove that the text is not a single unit and is rather made of different units of different kinds. And third, to look for various kinds of breaks in the text to find out the possible repressed interpretations which could be brought out of the textual silence. So what would be the method if we apply these assumptions to a literary text? The oppositions challenged by deconstructions, which have been inherent in Western philosophy since the time of the ancient Greeks, are characteristically binary and hierarchical, involving a pair of terms in which one member of the pair is assumed to be primary or fundamental, the other secondary or derivative. Some examples we have already discussed in the previous slides. More examples include nature and culture, mind and body, presence and absence, form and meaning, literal and metaphorical, and many more. To deconstruct an opposition is to explore the tensions and contradictions between the hierarchical ordering assumed and sometimes explicitly asserted in the text and other aspects of the text meaning, especially those that are indirect or implicit or that rely on figurative or performative uses of language. Through this analysis, the opposition is shown to be a product or construction of the text rather than something given independently of it. Deconstructive readings, in contrast, treat works of art not as a harmonious fusion of literal and figurative meanings, but as instances of the intractable conflicts between meanings of different types. They generally examine the individual work not as a self-contained artifact, but as the product of relations with other texts or discourses, literary or non-literary. Finally, deconstructive readings place special emphasis on the ways in which the works themselves offered implicit critiques of the categories that critics choose to analyze them. For example, some strands of feminist thinking engaged in a deconstruction of the binary opposition between man and woman and critiqued essentialist notions of gender and sexual identity. But there are definitely some limitations to this approach as well. For example, some philosophers, especially those in the Anglo American tradition, dismissed this approach as obscurantist wordplay whose major claims, when intelligible, were either trivial or false. Others accused it of being ahistorical and apolitical. Still, others regarded it as a nihilistic endorsement of radical epistemic relativism. Despite such attacks, deconstruction has had an enormous impact on a variety of intellectual enterprises. So, what is the conclusion? In all the fields it influenced, deconstruction called attention to rhetorical and performative aspects of language use, and it encouraged scholars to consider not only what a text says, but also the relationship and potential conflict between what a text says and what it does. Most generally, deconstruction joined hands with other strands of post-structural and postmodern thinking to inspire a suspicion of established intellectual categories and a skepticism about the possibility of objectivity. I hope that you enjoyed this brief presentation to simplify literary theory. So I'm looking forward to your comments and feedback. Thank you, and God bless you all.